like to make a comment this evening? Fred? Fred Mertz? How are you?
Very good, how are you?
Good.
Fred Martz with Village of Montgomery, and I just want to bring an issue about the blasting
Okay.
going on.
We got your letter, we circulated it.
Okay.
Okay, we did get a response to this afternoon from the building inspector that addresses some of the issues.
Right.
And there's ongoing efforts into monitoring the situation.
Okay.
Did you want me to read his letter? Maybe that'll help, or?
What I'm requesting is, they can blast whatever they want, but that they minimize the amount of explosives that they use. The tremors are felt, they're radiated out.
Was his,
It's on Kaisertown Road, it's been into the village of Montgomery, who knows where else it's gonna go, you know, it could even go into the neighborhood.
okay.
So, I mean, to look at the under part of the rock and everything else, the whole layout, again, before you blast again. Because people's homes are at stake here.
I'll read this letter.
Okay.
For the audience and for the record. This is from Jim Farr, inspecting engineer on the job. I received an inquiry from Storm King Construction in regards to blasting and the rumbling of their building. I was at Storm King today when the blast occurred at approximately 1:15 and felt the rumble effects. I immediately called the site contractor and told them that they need to reduce the off-site impacts, and he was going to let the blasting contractor know. I also emailed the construction manager and conveyed my concerns about the vibration. He was going to check the off-site seismic graphs that are located at the 84 overpass and Home Depot warehouse to see what the seismic graphs measured and let me know. He did say that today's blast was a deep blast, but they would take the appropriate actions to mitigate the situation from occurring again. I also received a call from a resident on Beaver Dam Road that also said she felt the vibration as well. Bruce, the Village of Montgomery building inspector, was on Chandler Street to monitor the blast impacts last Thursday and did not feel anything. My inspector was on site and did not feel any vibration from approximately 1,500 feet away last Thursday. We are monitoring the situation daily and will require the contractor to take the appropriate measures to mitigate off-site impacts. Thank you, Jim. We also have sent, Pete also got a copy of your letter, and we will send a copy of your letter to the applicant.
Because, I mean, we're about a half mile away,
Understood.
so, I mean, there's got to be some kind of solid rock that I hit one into the table pretty hard, the other one's gonna vibrate. So it's all solid.
Yeah.
So there's gotta be something looked into a little bit more than what it has been.
Okay. We'll keep an eye on it.
All right, thank
Promise
you.
You're welcome. Anyone else this evening? Comments, questions? Okay. We'll go into our first regular.
Fred?
Yes, Beverly.
Beverly Mertz, St. Louis. I just have a question. I rode by the Medline site today, and the retention ponds are full to overflowing. Are you getting the proper reports from them after rain and things like that?
Yes.
Just an inquiry.
I actually, on my way home last evening, hearing of all the rain we had, I took a ride by both large sites and looked at them at least from the road, because I can see some ponds from the road, okay? To make sure they hadn't crested and gone over. I also emailed Jim Farr, the inspecting engineer. He told me that they had been on the sites on Saturday at the construction managers to maintain anything, and that they had done a pretty good job. They hadn't had any real problems. Okay. So
Okay.
we're keeping a good eye on
It
the
just
storm.
looked like there was some overflow.
I think what had happened is some water came down on the left side, and they built a berm around it to hold it. But I didn't see anything out on 416.
Okay.
So
All right, thank you.
we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Fred?
Yes, Donnie?
Tom Berger, Village Montgomery. On the Medline issue, where 416 meets 211. You know where I'm talking about? All right, so there's always been a crater in that area. So what they did was, because of the turning radius there is very tight, they filled it in with stone. Well, of course, that stone, when the trucks go over, it's now leaking onto 416. Who's responsible for maintaining that?
Did Medline do that, or did they
Medline.
do that?
Medline.
Or Nick Fitzpatrick?
Well,
Sure.
So, just so you know, I saw Jim Farr this morning, because I had been out on the site and noticed it the other day. And in speaking to Jim, being a state road and then a county road, he needed to figure out who took care of that part of the road, noting that it hadn't happened, and it was probably the turn radius of the trucks trying to get on 416, that he would speak to some individuals, look into it, because I had the same issue. I noticed rocks skidding on the road, and there's a concern that should they get pinched up by a tire, they could do damage to somebody's windshield, car, or otherwise. So I did notify him, and he's gonna follow up with the paperwork with me.
it might be a nice idea, Fred, if the suggestion is made, if you're gonna put stone on, put some quarry process on top, roll it, and that would settle it. Well, what they did was they put the 2.5 inch stone left.
That should cover it too. Yeah. Anyone else this evening? Okay then, we'll get to the presentation for Davenport Holdings LLC, AKA Chili Gas Inc. This is on Stone Castle Road. SEU permit and amended site plan review. This is an initial presentation of this project. Representing the applicant is
Tom DePuy.
How are you, Tom?
Good, good.
You put, hopefully you wrote your own music.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Good. All right.
I got Dave Davenport with me, in case you got some other questions. We're proposing 2 buildings on the site. One is a truck repair shop. The other is a proposed biofuel production facility. So he's looking at bringing that in. I think that's the special exception permit that we need under the code. Basically, if you want to come up and give a little description of what the process is, so the board kind of understands, and then we can go into that.
Hi, good evening.
How are you, Dave?
Good.
Good.
Thanks for your time. So in this particular warehouse, what we would do is we would stage various size plastic jugs that you've probably seen on more on farm sites, poly tanks. And then the process would be we bring in primarily truckloads of raw soybean oil. And then it goes through the processing where we inject methanol and potash for catalyst, and then the end product is biofuel that can be used in, be blended or strictly as home heating oil or diesel for trucks. And it's in line with a lot of the legislation up here in the Northeast that's coming, becoming to the forefront of trying to, it's a carbon neutral design, and it's a very safe product to produce.
Yeah, I'll mention that there's 2 types of biofuel process. This is the low pressure, low temperature one, which takes away a lot of the danger of the process. I know out in the Midwest they have the high temperature, high pressure ones, but this is a different type of process than what you see in the thing.
Any idea how many gallons of fluid you would have in that building?
The tanks combined are 196,000 gallons. The 3 finished products are 10,000 gallons each, so the finished product amount would be 30,000 gallons.
And what would happen to the rest of that material?
Most of it ends up becoming biofuel. You do recycle some methanol in the process, and then glycerin is about 5% is left over for glycerin, and that gets resold for cosmetics and things like that.
Okay.
The two flammable pigments is what, methanol
And potash.
and potash, and they're limited to what, 600 gallons?
Yeah.
Yeah, in each thing, so the two flammable products are limited in the gallonage. The other stuff has very high flash points, so they're not.
Okay, and you make a cocktail,
Yes.
basically, and then that is used, this biofuel is used for trucks
Yep, and in home heating systems.
and home heating. Is there one end product, one type of end product, or are there a couple of different things, one for home, one for vehicle?
No, it's all biofuel, but they brand it as biodiesel and bio
Right.
heat, but it's the same product.
I think what we're real interested in seeing is how the building inside would lay out, and what kind of equipment's inside to, there's a lot of fluid going to be in that building, and some of it's flammable, and I think we're concerned.
Yeah, most of it's low temperature, low pressure, it's pneumatics for the pressure, it's Schedule 8 piping. It's really quite inexpensive, which is what attracted me. I was really going into inquiries as not to do it, and every time I kept investigating into it, I was like, oh, they've really come a long way, and this technology, like I say, it's low pressure, low temperature, has a high output. But most of it's basically vegetable oil, some form of vegetable oil. It's soybeans, corn,
Okay.
switchgrass. So the bulk of it goes through, and most of the containers are 1,400 gallons, 2,500 gallons, 6,000 gallons. So you don't have in any individual capacity a large volume. So if something did happen, you're going to spill vegetable oil until you get to those finished three products. And that flash point is 266 degrees, so even the biodiesel itself really needs to be at a high pressure and temperature to ignite.
Yeah.
So it's, most of it's a pretty safe process.
Yes, Jay?
No, the regs you have to follow, fire protection, containment on all the tanks and all that kind of stuff, can you show us all that? I expect double wall construction on the tanks and, for a lot of these, used to be in the water treatment business. If you have chemicals on site, like say caustic soda or something like that, it's a double wall tank with a containment, so that if it did break or split or something like that, it would still be in the building.
I think the finished product will be subject to the DEC bulk storage, so they
Yeah.
have their containment requirements and everything, which we will meet. So.
Okay, thanks for that paper or the report on the Florida site.
Yeah.
So expect we have to have some sort of fire protection system. I would imagine a tank, because there's no water out there, and stone gas.
No.
So we'll have to come up with a storage, either underground or something like that for the fire suppression system.
Yeah, with a tank, with a pump and sprinklers or something like that. I don't know, we gonna fence it or anything like that, or?
We have a fence around the existing part of the property. I would want to fence it.
You would want to?
Yeah, I would want to, just for, be along the road. And just,
Okay, so the engineers can, Andrew can look at it. I would imagine you're gonna be backing in like a 18-liter tanker or something like that, 5,000 gallons or something, to haul this stuff away, and to bring it for that matter.
yeah, the building's going to be designed with a through where you bring in the soybean oil.
Good.
And then you process it, and then on the other end is a drive-through where you would load the finished product.
Oh, okay.
So the unloading and loading's all inside the building?
Inside, yeah.
Okay.
Questions, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, Pete.
First question has to do with where is the soybean oil coming from? Soybeans mostly grown in the south, so you're trucking oil, I assume, over a number of...
That's exactly what I thought, and that's one of the things that I uncovered when I did it. I went down to the National Biodiesel Board in Tampa, they had a national convention, and I was wondering where the supply for the feedstock. And while I was waiting to fly back, I got a call from a farm in Syracuse, and they grow 5,000 acres of soybean. And they said, I saw you were at the convention, we grow soybean and manufacture it for biodiesel. And so my supplier's gonna be 3 hours away.
Are you crushing it here, or
No,
are they
no.
crushing it?
They're crushing.
And the other question has to do with, you said methane was an end product or a waste product of the process. Is that being vented out of the building, or what are you doing with that?
If it's required, methanol is actually gonna be blended into it, that's what makes it flammable. There's very low quantity of that, but it's, you know, vegetable oil has all the consistency of like a diesel fuel. You just need to make it flammable, is kind of the trick of the pudding of diesel fuel, or biodiesel. And then oddly enough, a lot of it gets recycled, and we can actually use some of it for our use in the propane side of the business also.
So you're collecting it, reusing it in the process?
Yeah, they call bubblers and you recycle the methanol there.
Okay, that's it for me, further.
Yes, sure.
Thank you. I read the Indian River document. You use as an exhibit for a similar methodology to what's going to happen here. Are you following that, or doing something very different from it?
So we are reassembling. I drove down, we loaded that on a barge, shipped it up here. I unloaded it last week.
And I had visited the site while I was in operation prior to them breaking it down, so some wanted me to look at, and they were very helpful down there. It's a very interesting process, so.
Okay. So a couple of questions based on that setup, just for knowledge. It shows that the chemicals are stored in the Indian River document, and they use potassium methoxide. Are you also going to be using potassium methoxide? And it is also inclusive of the separate use of methanol and potash, and so you'll be using that also. And the chemicals they show in the document, they are stored external to the main production area, and they utilize a tanker backed up to the building that you'll be hooking up and utilizing that as a source tank for the methanol. Is that still what you're going to do?
What we're actually looking to do is to store that material inside the building, but we're going to put a separate firewall to separate that from the rest of the facility. And that's our plan on doing that. And then we'll have a separate suppression system for that area, because that's the actual material that is flammable. The rest of it through the whole process is, like he says, you gotta be high pressure, high temperature to even get it there, you know?
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's the plan, to isolate that away from everything.
So can you give me or the board an idea of about what kind of quantities of methanol pure you're going to be used in the process?
The tanker that they had was 6,000 gallons. And then the containers that would be either in the room inside where the individual fire protection would be, or outside, depending on how the design goes. But those are 200-300 gallon, they're square proof containers.
Because I thought the process described it taking from the tanker directly in, and the hose was going to be your grounding. So you're going to pump off to separate vessels to hold it for the process inside for production?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that pretty much goes in and gets mixed. It's not like you're storing anything large quantity inside during the process. Yeah, it gets mixed into the
So the
product.
tanker is going to be your source, and then you're going to bring it directly in from the tanker into the building to add to the, what is it, the secondary process?
Yes.
Okay, and now, and you're assuming that's going to be 6,000 gallon tanker?
Yeah, I mean, I have to buy it, so if they make different sizes, I'll
I'm
get
just
the one.
curious for the
Yeah.
quantities of the methanol that's going to be contained.
Yeah, I would, today, I would say probably 6,000.
Around 6,000? Okay, and following up for the CH3 payload, potassium methoxide, it shows that it's kind of stored outside of what I took, like an enclosed place, what you're going to do different. You're going to have it inside the building.
Yes.
You are.
Yeah.
And for venting of those vapors that are becoming, if it should come exposed, you're gonna have sensors in there, you're gonna have an exhaust in that particular room?
They will have exhaust.
Okay, and is the potassium methoxide in a solid form that you'll be mixing it into the ethanol, which it sounds like that was the process in Indian River?
Yeah.
So it's going to be stored in a solid form?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's highly reactive with water. It becomes explosive in the reaction with water. So the fire suppression in that room, I know they're going to be vented because you take it off and you mix it, right, to something of 68% of potassium methyl oxide and 32% ethanol. Is that about your approximate ratio?
Yeah.
So you're hand mixing that, so your employees will be mixing that in a specialized room to bring those two chemical streams together?
That's my understanding. Yeah. We have a plant operator that's involved with this that will be coming up once we pipe it. You know,
And so how much about the potassium methyl oxide is it about 300 gallons total and inside the site that's mixed with the ethanol?
Yeah, that was the proposal, that was in this original process.
I'm just relating to Indian River,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
obviously I'm just feeling it out and learning on it. So what special care for the potassium methyl oxide would you take? Because in that solid form, I'm assuming it's in the drum, canister, a powder, how is that contained?
it's actually 30-pound, or there might be 50-pound bags on pallets, is, you know, but we would follow NFPA, whatever is required.
Because it is obviously, you can't use water suppression on it, the way it was addressed kind of the document, or the MSDSs that I went out and read. You really can't use water directly to it, but only to cool the vessel should a runaway condition occur. And it's becomes very toxic, very hazardous. As a matter of fact, it can be very lethal, in fact. So, I mean, it's respirator and these different kind of things.
Yeah, reading the MSDS form, it got my attention too.
Yeah, well, when I first read the skits, I went out on several different sites, and then including this one in order to interpret the level, because the one I first read was at 95%, so it's a little bit stronger than yours, of course. Okay, so it's not open storage for those bags, if you will, of this material, and there's no other securing, they're just going to remain in their bags in that environment?
That's the way they were stored in Indian River.
They were.
Yeah.
They kind of described it differently, maybe I interpret right. It talks about you're going to have a central vacuum system for the spills along with the gutter system that's going to flow any major minor tanking tube. Is that with your system? Because they said when they had a spill that they would utilize the central vacuum system in order to remove the liquids and the other materials, and that if it were to go, which I'm not sure exactly because it wasn't on the document, on what particular type of sanitary disposal system, and I'm not that familiar with that, but you would have like a unit protected for drought and do these things. Are you going to have inside, because you're containing, what was the total gallons again inside the building?
Total actually 196,000 gallons.
196,000 gallons all total from raw process with sediment process 1 to the end product for the stored containers for the biodiesel to be.
Yes.
Okay.
And the gutter system that they described was because they had a two-tiered warehouse down there. We won't need that because we'll be on one floor.
You're going to be completely
Yeah.
flat and segregated
Yes.
accordingly. Okay, so what kind of containment within that building are you going to be building, like sand berms? You know, like a holding area around, what happens if a spill should occur?
What we're going to find out from the DEC, but we'll definitely, the regulations I'm familiar with, I'm in contact with the DEC to get a bulk storage license permit for this product, the end product. But most likely what I would do is just have a cement berm that would contain 110% of the largest tank. I may, as we get into the design, it would just may be easier to just create two separate burned areas, one for the finished product. Because it is working in the initial section there, if it does spill, you're going to basically have soybean oil. And I actually think we have it properly stored. We could reuse it, if it's a clean floor. It has to meet the specs when you get the finished product, and I'm not, anticipating, and, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Quickies, does any of this new application have anything to do with LPG or is it completely separate?
Completely separate.
So our LPG regulations apply to the prior approval or won't apply here?
Right.
Okay. Are the repairs in the other building just for your trucks or is it to market the repair service to anyone who come down the road?
That would be a separate tenant. He actually has his own business now, and I've known him for 30 years, and he's operating in a separate location, so it would be, commercial. He builds and repairs propane and oil trucks. It's a related business.
So it has nothing to do with your proposal? He would run his own business separately?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned the DEC. Do you need some form of Part 360 permit? Is that your understanding from them?
No, we need it's a storage permit for above ground storage permit, that's what we're gonna need. With the finished product.
Registered bulk storage
Yeah,
facility.
bulk storage facility.
We're still obviously just feeling our way through this new application. The building inspector had determined that your biofuel would fall under our recycling law. And if he's correct, we tie acreage to tons per day. I'm not sure we were thinking liquid when those laws were drafted 20 years ago. We're thinking solid waste, compost, bulk stuff that you measure in tons. If Mr. Farr is correct, he says your recyclable handling and recovery facility, if he's correct, you can see the schedule, 10 tons per day per acre, 3 acre minimum. And again, if he's correct, your whole site is what, 7, 8 acres?
Right.
And of course, some of that has to be allocated to the current Chevy gas. Some of that has to be allocated to the repair function. By the way, on the repair function, he has it as a warehouse to repair trucks under E19. E19 is the storage yard for building materials, so I don't know, we have to talk to Jim. I think he got maybe a little off on his numbers.
And we have changed some of our numbers, so we'll have to go over that with him, make sure.
Yeah,
we're on the
please.
right
And
code.
again, we're all just getting this
Right.
brand new, but it's important to get the uses figured out because everything will flow from that. And as I understand it, let's assume that this repair garage is a separate use, which by the way is allowed in the I-3.
Right.
But there will be 3 different uses on one parcel. That's got to be looked at. And again, on recycling specifically, tons per day, I don't know how you equate gallons to TPD.
Yeah, I think what happens is your zoning's a little antiquated. I don't think this actually would fall. You're thinking of composting, solid waste transfer, stuff like that. That doesn't apply to here. This is a fuel process.
Well, and I'm not disagreeing with what you said.
Right.
I'm not in a position to refute what Mr. Farr said, but there's a disconnect that's got to get worked out.
Okay.
And I asked you to open up a dialogue with him and let's figure out the uses. Just for guys, how much is a gallon of this stuff weigh?
7 pounds.
Almost the same as a
Diesel.
diesel. 7 pounds?
Yeah, like 7 pounds.
To the North Ridge. To the north. I have a quick question for you. How far are you from the New York City Aqueduct?
It's on the back of the property, and when we went through the zoning for the propane, there was a representative from the DEC that we communicated with.
Okay, and you're going to communicate with DEP,
Yeah,
right?
for New York City,
Right,
yeah.
and you will communicate with that person again?
Yes.
You're one lot removed from it, I believe.
Yeah.
Connie also next. Connie was a huge
Jupiter one.
Right, but Conneaut has a right away to Stone Castle, and I don't know if it's over this parcel or over an adjacent parcel.
I'm not sure.
Will you turn out right away in favor of the fellow that owns the old Colton house, Thomas Colton house?
I don't think so, I don't think that comes across as property.
It may not, it may come across the neighbors.
I think it's,
But, and by the way, he's, I think it's Jupiter one, you have Juniper one?
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, Jupiter, okay.
He's the man I'm talking about, and I can't tell you who's right away, he does cross your client's property,
Right.
but he crosses some of his.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in, pretty good contact with the Corps. He usually do communicate.
Okay, that's all I have.
I know when we did the propane, we did get involved with the New York State
DEP came on. They
DEP.
came to a meeting.
Yes, yes,
Back in Bob.
and, yeah, we'll contact them again. They were more concerned with the propane thing, I don't think they'll be as concerned with this process, but we'll get them involved.
Just a quick one, straight out. Gentlemen, any outside storage expected at either building?
Advise, so no.
Our intent was to keep everything inside, just, start storing stuff outside, you don't know what's going on, so.
Exactly. And are you in a position to answer any question about the same outside storage for the repair sector?
Yeah, I mean, at his current facility, I think the only thing he has is a 300-gallon skid tank for some diesel.
Where is that?
It's on Genie Drive.
Okay. And do you propose gates on one or both entrances to the facility? If you're going to put a fence up, I see your knock boxes here on the south entrance.
Yeah, I think under what my plan would be to have some kind of a, electric gate or sensor gate or either a passcode or something.
Would that be on both
Both,
entrances? Thank you, President.
Probably put Knox box on the other entrance.
I would suggest that would be on.
Yeah, Ryan?
Just a couple quick questions. Is chili gas related to this at all, or is that a third use and a third owner, or is this all leased from some holding company, or what's the operation here?
Sure, yeah. No, well, Davenport Holdings is the property owner. And then Chili Gas is, rents the space. I'm the owner of both, 100% on both of those items. And then the proposed warehouses would be, Davenport Holdings would be the owner of the warehouse, and then Net Zero Biofuel would be a tenant. I'm involved with that, not 100%. And then the Charlie's Garage is the name of the other outfit. And I would not be involved with ownership there at all. It would just be a tenant.
It'd be leased, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
You own the building, but they lease it.
Yes.
Okay, talking about low temperature, low pressure, can you specify ranges for what low temperature would be considered low pressure?
Under 140 degrees.
And pressure?
Pressure is, it's pneumatics, it's air driven. That's the thing, don't know the answer from it.
Okay. If you could get that for us, appreciate it.
And all the tanks atmospheric, there was no
Yeah,
pressure there.
yeah.
That was inside.
Are you cooking, or are you distilling, or what is the process?
Catalyst, it's centrifuge, it's a mix of,
You
Talking
use
about
sonic,
methanol.
right?
ultrasonic.
I'll use sonic for mixing.
Are you bringing methanol in to mix with it, or? Okay.
High quality. It's highly flammable because that's how you get the kind of vegetable oil to be useful for heating systems or for diesel for trucks.
Right. Okay. MSDS sheets, if you could share those with us, if you haven't gotten them already, I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
There's gonna be on site.
That, they're in the Indian River biofuel.
Okay, I didn't go all the way through that.
Yeah, no problem.
Hours of operation, for, I guess, the two individual sites, is this daytime operation, 24-hour
Yeah, the
operation?
plan is 10-hour, it's probably, the first year we're probably, going to be building up. I mean, we might be, honestly, once the demand hits and the legislation passes and we get our feet under ourselves, you know, probably it's, you know, it would be 5 or 6 days, 10 hours.
Wastewater, is there anywhere on site that you anticipate septic systems, or does this have sewer out here?
No, it doesn't have sewer. We had developed a septic system over here when we did chili gas, and then we'll be adding to that when we develop the site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Common.
Yeah, common septic.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Two things. First of all, this is a good looking building.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And second, good comp, if it's 7 pounds per gallon and 30,000 gallons a day at 3 acres, or is it 30,000 pounds per day? That comes out to like 4,286 gallons per day. Is that in the ballpark, or is that not here?
No, I do agree. I think that's something that we need to kind of look at the purpose of what, because this isn't we're not composting, this is a pretty innate, you know, other than you're just taking vegetable oil and you're making it flammable, it's not recycling, it's repurposing.
So you fill up the finished product tanks, 30,000 gallons, like once a day, or that's kind of the plan?
Their best day was 32,000 gallons in a day.
Okay, so that's what you're talking to the building inspector, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have to straighten that out, that part of it.
Yeah.
See what part is going to fall under this.
Okay, I think that's important. Yes.
Can you tell me what the business card so that I can pass it on to the chief of Montgomery or something?
One final question.
Yes, Rich?
One final question, please. Are you cooking a batch of biofuel at a time, or is it an ongoing
Continuous flow.
process?
Continuous flow.
So, when you talk about hours of operation, you're not really shutting the process down, it's an ongoing process. It's not gonna be, do it on Wednesday and stop, it's gonna be.
Well, when it's operating, it's continuous flow, but when we shut down for the day, we shut down.
You actually shut down the process, like
Yeah, no
stop
flow.
adding materials. and
No
stuff?
adding, just, yep, then we refire the boiler the next morning. Understood?
Okay, I'm not sure I understand that.
It'd be nice to have a floor plan to see how it lays out, so we can understand tanks, distribution, where it gets mixed, where it gets stored.
Yeah, in the Indian River, there is a schematic of it. It's going to be similar, but we are going to have to, and they are working on it, because the partners that I have are the former owners of the Indian River
Okay.
biofuel, and they're
Yeah.
working with the design on that, so that'll definitely be part of this.
Yeah, and you have a particular size building, it'd be nice to see how it at least generally lays out.
Absolutely.
You know, traveled ways, where piping is, where stuff is, I mean, at least in 2 dimensions. I don't think we have to, you know, it's too crazy, but at least we want to know how it works out, where your containment centers would be in case there's a problem.
Should we just ask for a narrative, just for the record, because this is obviously new to all of us, maybe a couple of paragraphs,
Yeah.
just in layman's terms, explaining the process. And then lastly, is a normal tanker tractor trailer about 80,000 gallons? Trying to get a sense of how many trailers you might be.
I'm figuring about 6 a day. They can range from 6,000 to 12,000 gallons.
That's all?
It's
Yeah.
no tankers, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're thinking 6 to,
When things are really moving, because I was trying to, in my head, make sure the flow was going to work and everything. So that, you know, to get 30,000 gallons through there, that 6 would be 5 trucks, so six trucks, 36,000.
we should have the highway super look at both the access points.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that.
And I don't know how heavy these trucks are when they're loaded.
Where are you shipping this to?
It's gonna be some terminals, oil wholesale terminals like Global down in River Road. Because there's a lot of legislation where they're requiring, they call it like B5 or 5% buy or B10. So that kind of the premise is that if the legislation in New York was, there's someone who looks right now for B5 or 2021, B10 or 2023. We do 1 billion gallons of heating oil alone in New York State. So there's going to be a need for the B5, 50 million gallons of biofuel to mix into this system. And there's only one company producing biofuel in New York right now.
So you envision it going to River Road for the most part?
Yeah, that would be, it's about 7 or 8 miles across down there. And then we would inject it into one of their blending tanks.
Yeah, traffic, it's going to be one of those things, we don't want to traffic on 17K. You certainly don't want to go at 52 from there.
747, right, to exit.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crossing over, right, so,
Yeah, traffic numbers too would be good to have.
absolutely. Employees,
Yeah.
shifts, things like that. Truck trips.
Okay, so you'll touch base with the building inspector, with Jim Barr?
Yeah, we'll go over the,
We'll
what
get you-
category it's going.
Our consultants will get you a review,
Okay.
and then, with the information to you.
Yeah, as soon as they get the process laid out, we can come up with a floor plan so you better understand.
Sure.
Inside the building.
Yeah, what things are going to be. Okay, very good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If you want to make a site visit, do we have to talk to anybody or just call you or should we?
Yeah, on my card,
Yeah, we both got it.
but anytime.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next this evening is Israeli on Daly Road, 2-lot subdivision of Lansbury subdivision, lot 10, conditional final approval discussion. How are you, Ross?
Good evening. For the record, Ross Cumberland, Engineering Surveying Properties, here on behalf of Israeli. Project received preliminary approval from the board back in We proceeded to the health department, secured their approval late last month, and we submitted the final. We respect the request, additional final approvals. Recently filed a copy.
Okay. I think we're still looking for that covenant.
It's not gonna be a condition.
Right, it'll have to be modified, it'll have to reflect the file map.
The second time it's been
Been modified, yeah.
Or was there anything else we needed to discuss on this matter? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to grant conditional final approval. That will refer to all terms of the main deck.
Yeah,
And the
get a
outstanding fees.
second on that, and I can go over some
Okay. Do I have a motion by Rose, seconded by John, all those in favor signify by saying
I
aye.
just want to add some conditions. All the terms and representations in the NADAC dated April 15th will apply. As Ross pointed out that evening, you also gave a preliminary approval and you listed some conditions which will simply repeat. So the NADAC is one of them. Payment of 1 rec fee for 1 new lot. Payment of any outstanding planning board fees. Any final consultants' comments on the plans received June 23rd? With that said, I think Andrew already signed off. I saw a memo from Andrew that all comments were addressed. I would just want to make sure Bonnie would have an opportunity. There was no landscaping, so we don't need to hear from Karen Aaron. And as the chair pointed out, amend that restrictive covenant. That's actually in your interest, because right now we're applying with both lots. You want to exclude the smaller lot from it. That would be the point. You can explain that to whoever's doing the legal work. They could actually take our work from last time, which is change the lots around. And that would get recorded with the plat. There's no common driveway agreement, there's no stormwater agreement we need, so it's just that coming. So if that's all acceptable, then we can vote that motion.
Can I vote on that, council?
Sure.
Or advice you? Since I am new, I have followed some of this, but not been totally involved, should I abstain? I am familiar, but I'm not sure.
Now, the law on that is if you review the file, you can vote. If you're not comfortable, you certainly can recuse it and make a difference to the applicant. It's totally your call. If you do vote, though, I'd like you to restate that you did review the minutes in the file and you're up to speed on this.
Thank you.
So if that's an affirmative, then you can vote. If it's not, then just.
Thank you.
So we had a first and a second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I recuse.
Thank you.
I have.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next this evening, Medline Industries, New York State Route 416, our retaining wall discussion. We had a conference call last Friday, we had to be back with the whole board here that discussed this wall design as a group. Now, I believe there had been a conference call amongst 3 board members and some consultants and a representative from Medline back in May. And I think there were some understandings that were left from that meeting as far as the types of stone that we're going to, the types of walls that were going to be used. Are we looking at the same ones as that was understood back then? That's the question I have. First question. Now, I know we got, these are the split face, and the other one is that,
Lock and load.
lock and load.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gonna throw those up. I didn't come prepared with an
Can
easel.
you use the easel over there? All right.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Over there.
And they're so low, we didn't know it was there.
And in case you forgot, I'm Kelly Ashford Killinghorn, civil engineer.
Josh Harden and also.
Okay, so the two wall specs that we previously presented, the only one that's different is lock and load. We previously presented the Ready Rock, but it's the same style. So today we were hoping to get some consensus on the color selection for the walls.
Okay. The green on the north wall, number 1. Whatever's, what you would like that is to have that all being the same type block,
That's correct.
and then the purple or whatever it is, fuchsia, whatever, that's another type.
Yeah, so wall 7 is block and load just due to the tight conditions here with the
With the
highway. Wall 8, we switched to lock and load. It was our understanding that was kind of the agreement Medline made with the planning board to have that bigger block style. It doesn't have to be lock and load, but we're,
Well, I think the larger block style is what we prefer for the aesthetics, as this is going to be so visible. What was discussed at that meeting back in May? Was it lock and load? There was Ready Rock mentioned, I believe, correct?
Well, Fred, John, or Rosemary might be in here, but primary purpose of that call there in May was to discuss the building colors.
Okay.
So we talked a lot about the branding, and the blues and the grays and the whites. We went around a couple times with the colors, and we also talked about like, the signage, making sure that was correlated with the building colors. But we didn't get into the walls in depth,
Okay.
because it was kind of left open to us, you know, to approve colors and things like that at the you know, future meetings. So I don't think there was a whole lot of discussion with the walls except for, you know, that it was up to us to select that further on.
Yeah, and I think we had just provided the feedback from the board's landscape architect as well on the suggestions for color selections, but yeah, no determination was made on that time, so.
Right, and then because of that, we left it open in the approval documents and neg deck and all those further documents, just so that we could select it as the site was developed and the materials became available. Just because different quarries have different raw materials, and when we make these things, they can vary slightly. So we want to see, you know, actual representative materials. You guys remember anything?
Yep, no, that's exactly it.
Well, when you think about the lock and load and the split face, would there be any chance that that north wall could be the lock and load?
Which wall number?
One.
So that one, I guess I would ask, are you concerned that's going to be visible?
Well, it starts out fairly low, and
Yeah.
by the time you get up by the angle point of the building, it's about 18 feet high, I believe.
Yeah, the high point's here.
It's
Yeah.
18, and then it's 13, and then it blends back into the grade when you get to the back. I do know that it is pretty much perpendicular to 416, and as you go back, of course, it gets way back off the road quickly.
Yeah.
It starts about 100 feet back from the pavement, and then it, just goes straight back. There is a lot of landscaping in front of all these walls, at least the ones that are visible, but a lot of it isn't coniferous, it's going to be legal.
So this wall, I guess, so we have additional landscape screening. We also have, it gets heavily wooded back here as well. And then you also have this additional buffer, right, along the property line. And just driving by, I mean, so then you also have, mixed new property and new buildings there. So I don't think that you're going to be able to see any portion of this wall. And I guess, we can keep discussing it, but I know that in the finding statement and resolutions, everything was mostly, focused on this wall because it was the most visible, right, from 416. It's 5 feet to about here, 10 feet, and then you get to 18, 19.
Right.
Right out here, and,
Well,
definitely want to see into that east side.
are we okay with a lock and load first? Or do we want to see something different, something more architectural?
Mr. Chairman, let me just clarify something. The drive that comes down from the northern driveway, which is kind of parallel to that one, yes. You have lock and load on the side facing 416.
That's right, this one,
On the
right,
back side of it, you have the ready rock, or different, no, not that.
that block right there. Everything in green is proposed as this block, right here on the top.
I'm talking about the drive
You're talking about
that's
up here.
parallel to 416.
No, number 8.
This,
Not that, the one in between.
These two.
That one, yes.
yep, these,
If you have to lock and load on the front face facing 416, and on the back side of the driveway, you get into the other block. So you're looking at one block, a change of the size of the block as far as.
Through that block. The green is that block.
Yes.
so both,
The
You're talking
change
about-
from the
you're talking
larger
about the
block to
change.
the smaller block as you go over the driveway.
3 and 4 are both the split face.
yep,
Right,
8 is the lock and load.
right.
that's right.
Right. 3 and 4 are the same.
3 and 4 are much smaller walls too, and there's substantial landscaping planted in front of them. That's 3.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all some shade of that.
Yep.
Correct.
That's what you like. And the one down underneath the table there, that's
Yeah.
the lock and load sample.
Oh, that's close.
Because you build up center crawl space.
Yeah.
And that actually,
How heavy is this?
Oh, yeah. They're all heavy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm strong, but.
Kelly, I didn't need you to wheel it out, we had
Yeah, we brought some muscle.
We've lost.
that's just the face.
Thank you.
And what you are able to do is to change put whatever shape you choose on it after installation.
Yes. I spoke to the manufacturer today.
Okay.
Basically, because each piece of concrete that manufacturers either one use, they can change color of each batch of concrete that's mixed together to be slightly different shades.
Sure.
So they spray paint with a stain both products.
Okay.
Is my understanding. So after it's installed, it's all spray painted. And the object is to get everything the same color.
Yes.
You know, I kept putting on the wall, going to a different lot, and the colors changed.
Understood, yeah. So that way it'd be consistent. And they would make any shade, basically the color charts like Benjamin Moore.
Exactly.
The smaller cinder block type product only has a few different colors.
Yeah, the lock and load, we can go any color under the sun.
You spray them too? You don't spray?
As
That's what
far,
you get.
to my knowledge, there's no.
You
that's
can't
what you
change
get.
that. What you see, that's what you see. That doesn't, they don't spray that. Okay. Now, if you go down to 17, just below Slopesburg, there's 30-foot walls down there made out of that. And Ross did it. He did some engineering on the job. I did some engineering. But they're wood stone and wood gated apartments, rainbow color. And they're the split face. And they got a split rail fence on the top. I mean, it's on 17, I don't know how they're gonna get in that, but anyway, that's what it is. It is a very, very high wall. That's used pretty extensively. The wall I sent around to board members today, the ones I had on my text message group, was basically the one on the ground. And whether they're gonna paint it, I don't know. But that was a 14 to 16 foot wall. That's what it looked like. I think what we're, purpose tonight is to figure what we're gonna accept.
I think that Kelly and Josh both said that they wanted to select the materials, right? And then we can select the color later, because you have to get, I guess if we're using the lock and load, we could select the color at a later time.
For the lock and load walls, we can do down the road. You can come out and see samples on site if you want to do that. For the split face, we need to come up with a color tonight. That's my goal anyway.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes.
ask a question?
Sure.
I think you said in the document, just coming on board, you said that area number 8 could be altered if we so wish to the type of stone. It was just because 7 in the easement area development that you are restricted to a particular type of stone, right?
Correct.
So you'd be open to matching, say, 8 to 4, 2, and 3 to make that a total cohesive image, would that be right?
Yeah. We changed 8 just based off of FEIS comments and speaker comments. 8 can go whichever rock you want.
Yeah, 8's pretty small.
Yeah, maximum weight is 26.
26 and 7's up to, as you
Yeah,
can see before.
7's like 30.
But to stay away from the easement, it needs to be what that style is like, because you don't have to dead man it back in so far.
Yeah, that's right. It's not so bad, it's just going from the rest of it.
Yeah.
Usually it's not connected.
Right.
So one thing about the lock mode is that you can go up to 60 feet high and it can handle, I think it's 60 feet. A 60
I mean, personally, 7, the lock and load, I don't think, do we have any problem with the lock and load on 7? So we'll pick the color later once we see it up.
7 is the 1x84 pieces of numbers.
Maybe we gotta start narrowing it down,
Yeah.
try to get some resolution.
Move the 7 and 8 off the road.
See, I think once the building starts to get put up and the ponds get built in the front, we're not gonna have landscaping time they gotta decide the color. But we may want to look around with different colors. I mean, 7 and 8, the lock and load, do we want split face on the rest?
I mean, my whole thing is, you know, I just came under the understanding that there was gonna be different walls in different places,
Okay?
like a week or 2 ago. And my whole understanding through the whole secret process was that it was gonna be, you know, the brochure that we were handing out. You know, Ready Rock,
The Ready Rock,
you know,
right.
lock and load, one or the other. You know, I'd like to, if there was options on Ready Rock. You know, apparently there's only one face on the lock and load. But I think the consistency and, you know, color is going to be very important. I think consistency is a big one for me,
Okay,
especially if you can stand in one place and see two different materials.
yeah. Yes, Rose.
I too, I agree with Ronnie with consistency of the lock and load. It just will give a nicer appearance.
Oh, right, you know, because you're going to have a gray building, you can't have gray walls, and it's going to be just a wall of gray.
Sure.
So I think color selection is going to be important. I think at least all the walls below the parking lot should be the same color, hopefully material. And the wall behind the building may work better as a different color because you're contrasting it with the building as opposed to grass and landscaping. It's almost like the horizon. And you know, as far as the northern wall, I think it's number 1.
Yes.
You can definitely see that from the intersection of 416
Sure.
to 11. And we've had pictures of it go around. I just drove by today and you can see all the equipment parked there, all the way down to the grass. So it will be visible. So I think that should be correlated with the rest of the site.
So how do we coordinate this as far as what we want where? I think we're okay with the lock and load on 7.
We have an option on 7. Is that right?
It has to go. That's our toughest design restrictions. We have an easement right there that we don't have any options at all of it.
Okay.
Other than color.
7 is lock and load.
Yeah, because we don't have to dig back as far as the bank. Even the Ready Rock, we have to go further.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, on the eastern side of the building, the ground gets higher than the building. I don't know how much of it you can see from 84 when you're heading east. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we can see it.
The wind behind, or on the eastern side of the building. I'm just wondering, I know you're cutting into the shale there, and I really haven't seen what is the color of the shale that you're cutting into, because I think that's going to be the face that you're looking.
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
It's a dark gray.
Yeah.
5 and 6 we're not going to see, probably from the road.
Correct.
We're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 7, of course.
When we even say that it's visible, I'm sorry, I just have to,
Okay.
there's so much screening, and we beefed up the landscaping extensively outside to help break up these, that was, numerous iterations of landscape plans to keep this up, and it's evergreens, so just on the, as far as like a mitigation, perspective, this was always the wall that we were planning to you know, have this mitigation corridor with all of this, you know, and at each, like the high point of this all about, it's like right here, that's where you see the most landscaping, and same thing with this wall, so there is a lot of intentional screening at, you know, and even here, I mean, I still believe that with all the landscaping, I don't believe that you're going to see wall one, but, you know, I don't want to.
I understand. The corner of the north corner of 8, that's
Yeah.
heavily screened with coniferous trees, I believe. With a lot of evergreens, normally spruce, I think, I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah.
Would we be okay with that lock and load on 7 and 8? 7, we are okay. Okay. Then the rest of the walls, 5 and 6, we're not going to see.
5 and 6 are in the back, right?
In the
That's
back.
right, these two.
Okay. I mean, do we want a number of different style walls here, or are we just going to stick with? Are we okay with the split face anywhere?
Consider it.
Okay.
I mean, if we switch completely to lock and load, like, this is big money, this is a specialty block, we're talking $1 million, $2 million to go all lock and load. It's, that's a big ask,
The delta is $1 million or $2 million?
50% higher cost, just interior.
Amy Luckman, so that has a ridgeline appearance series in it as well. Is it a different stone, does anybody know?
Yeah, but the red one.
Can't use ready rock because it needs too much area in the easement. So I think for consistency's sake, we've got to have a couple of different types of walls. I don't think we want too many different types. Are we at least, are we okay with that? So if we're okay with 7 and 8 with the lock and load, now we've got to fix 5 and 6, we know we're not so concerned about. I don't think they're as high anyway. And they're in the back of the building, you know, people really don't see these people work there.
So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4 would really,
Right, and 3 and 4 aren't real high. I don't think 2 is either. 1 is the one that can be 18 feet up by the little wetland area, I think.
Yep.
yeah,
It's
just,
pretty tall, and it, I mean, I can speak for myself, but I can't speak for everyone else. It's hard to picture with no landscaping there, of course. And I go by that wall down there in Suffern and Hilbert every day, and there's nothing in front of it. It's 30 feet high, and I'm going to work. So I go by it. And there's buildings on the top of it. It's not going to be much different. It's different than this, because this is one big building. But it's got the same thing. It's got detention ponds. It's got walls on the walls. Not that horrible. I mean, the lock and load, we can decide on the color after we see it up. And I think that's a real plus because, you know, we may want something like this, we may want something a little different than what's stacked up in front of us here. I agree the gray shouldn't be in contention because I think it's just gonna be grayed out. The lower walls, two, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that aren't so extensive, I wouldn't see any problem with something like that, split face, but maybe 1, do the lock and load.
That was what I thought too.
Joe, this is color match, right? They said that's a dedicated color, so any other color, you know, those are the limitation of our color scheme, correct?
Yes.
So we can't go any warmer or any other tone.
If you want to exactly match that, then
That's
yes,
right.
then
That would be
if you
the
want,
effect, right? That uniformity,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so that's just a consideration.
so if 1 is lock and load,
And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the split face. And 7 and 8 are the lock and load. And we get to decide the colors after it's on.
2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we have to pick a color of those 4.
And then you're locking yourself for 1/8 for the same color.
Right, you have to choose one of these.
1, 8,
face colors.
and 7, well, yeah.
So it has, you're determined by that particular class of colors to what the loading block color would have to be painted.
Do we like any of these colors in the stack? And that's all the choices there are.
Yes.
I prefer a little more earthen tone, that reminds you more of, I had sent some pictures out of the tone, I think it was the Ready Rock. It was more earthen, and it was very pretty with the natural landscape of it.
Earthen meaning like brown
Kind of
or
brown family, warm, had some lights in it. One of them actually was not too far away from the top stone, but it had less of the pink in it. It reminded you more of an earthen brown, so that when you looked at it, you could almost picture it almost being, it was more architectural, obviously, it was the ledgestone part of that. And they actually had a gray building up in behind it, and it was pretty. And then you could actually see the natural green growing. It has some ivy, and it blended quite beautifully, and it just kind of reminded you of more stone wall, architectural, historic tones. I know she perhaps, the architect, evaluated a little later, but
Parents said stay away from the gray. I know she wanted the gray.
She wanted it, yeah, she wanted it.
Yeah, but then she thought the building was white.
That's true, she didn't
She didn't have to
see the
say
glass.
So,
there's 3 sets. One actually had great windows up, and then had a set of baskets, and the other ones was.
so we don't like any of those 4? And that, but there aren't any other choices.
Correct.
And they can't be overstained. I don't know.
I don't believe so. It would be a roll of the dice with the color already there.
For reference to, just the second one from the bottom is the one that, is being installed. In fact, the pure, yeah, that means everything is pure to help visualize.
How do you swing it around? I'm sorry. Depth of the two heavily. It looked very good. You like that one? Is that what you liked?
Well, that's the ready one.
I understand, we're looking for family or color.
And that,
Most of the landscaping along 4, and I guess it's 4, there are some coniferous trees right at the intersection. A lot of that is deciduous as well.
yeah.
And then the wall above that is just, there's nothing in front of that. It's just the wall right along the road.
Just corner, that's good.
Yeah, this is kind of a family. You see, it's a little more over here. And so that carries it again. That is
And
the
the one above 1, I think.
So that's, I mean, it just, it almost is a natural rock, but obviously you can't get that particular face because they're saying structurally it's being used.
Well, I'm trying to think of a solution, guys.
But that was the family, that was the concept, yes.
The ready rock, I mean, lock and load, we can color. The split face, we can. How do we come up with and we don't even like it, nobody likes a color. Anybody got any ideas?
If anybody, if you like that kind of family, would we go with the lock and load, only have one uniform in that family of color? I know it's a bigger stone, but it still gives it that, especially because it is what you would call a weathered face, or the rustic forward face. Do you like that tone? I mean,
Yeah, I'm not gonna weigh it too heavily on the colors. I think, I'm just more for the consistency, and I think that others may have better color coordination than I do. I'll just leave it at that.
I think one of the top two is fine would be for the green, and the lock and load would decide later. But, you know, I'm just wondering.
It doesn't really show up in the blocks, but one of the, not split face blocks came out looking like blue and purple or blue. I'm not sure which is that the bottom one? I saw a picture of a face, a wall face, and it had like blue and pink look to it. I don't really see that.
Maybe this top one, it's got a little pink in it.
This one had a bluish, the bottom one.
Maybe, yeah.
That's the one I really hated.
Okay, so not the top one.
Well, process of elimination, I think we're at the top two.
We need to see.
Yeah, so we started with the worst and worked our way up. The second one is more appealing to me, the second one down.
The second one down?
Yeah.
Okay.
The top one's too red for me, but
Yeah, I think that wall down there is the top one. The wall in below Hillburn.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I'd go for two also. Don't let me choose color at home.
No, I don't get two either. But
Fred, I'm just curious. You're looking under UV lights here. Did you actually look at it in direct sunlight to see what change that would
yeah,
make?
it'd be a little different probably.
I did send pictures in sunlight, if that helps. I can recirculate that.
Well,
I just sure thought that, I guess it's 3 and 4 should be the lot number also, so all 416 would be the same as the lot size.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my understanding was that there was gonna be one type of wall. I didn't realize, or maybe it wasn't fully clarified, that there was gonna be multiple different materials. So, I mean, if you're gonna do one certain type of wall, you have to do the one that's sitting on the other side of the road, the same thing with 4, and the wall behind that. And then, I guess you could make the argument that you can't see both walls, 4 and 9, or 4 and 8 at the same time. But they should all be the same color for sure. I prefer the same material throughout, you can see from.
the same type wall,
Right.
the whole thing.
Walls in the back of the building, I mean,
They
they
could
could be.
do whatever they
plates,
want.
it could be whatever.
You can make the split face, that's what the board prefers.
And just to clarify, we did talk about having at least 2 wall packs on site. So I don't want people to think that like doing this 180. The focus was always on, how we provide mitigation at wall 8, the best facing wall, for 16. So I really should feel like we're trying to go back and change something.
And maybe it's just me, but I mean, that was my recollection.
As far as 1 and 2, they'll be perpendicular to 416. I know that, Fred, you said that would be feasible, but I don't think people are going to be turning their head as they're going by, to take in the whole wall.
There's also all of this.
45, 50 miles an hour.
Well, I mean, to see any of it.
We can plant pine trees or evergreens along this corner too, if that gets us over the hump. We're open to thinking outside the box here.
The one on the bottom?
I
getting away, because there's a little bit of the gray, that's the one you pay, because it's too light.
No, because it has that blue and pink.
All right, we got it.
Okay. It was great, Carl.
You want to do it?
I can't, 8 and 7 are totally, don't look at them in the same vision as you see the other ones, so I don't think we're picking a color for them right now anyway.
Correct.
That can be different. It's really, we can pick one of those colors for the other walls, or, you know.
Got it?
Except we have to go with the same color for the big block.
I think not, because it's like you're driving down, you see 1, and then you come on a little bit, and all of a sudden you see 8, and they don't have to be the same, because you're never gonna see 1 and 8 at the same time. Right?
That's
Four,
why we
four,
wanted
7.
parallel 47.
8 and 7 we can take care of later. The rest of the wall should all be the same color. What do we want? And it's something that we've got to be similar to. If we think we have to be similar, we may find out we don't have to be after the road. It may not need to be that close. You know, the stormwater ponds will be done with the other stuff going on there. They may not. Can you do that after it's landscaped? Probably not. You color the wall.
Color the walls now.
You want to do that after it's up and
Correct.
when the weather's good.
Correct.
But it may have to be spring, but maybe not. So, I mean, I really don't care at this point what color we pick.
I'll pick.
I mean, personally, I'm good with gray rock on the floor all the way around. I'm not sure anybody else is because of the size perspective, but to me, the color then becomes hypercritical. If not, if you have to go with the split face, then obviously that's what
I just, a lot of floor with the blue in it. Just kind of contrast with the building.
Yeah, I'm not, you're talking about the rock on the floor that's gray right now.
Oh.
If we use that throughout the entire president's, because it's the lock and load that they need on
Do we
set.
want to move this along and maybe make the decision not tonight, maybe make it by Wednesday or so? Can we do that? I mean,
Something Congress can do on the road.
yeah, but I mean as far as, I mean, I'll pick whatever you want, I don't care.
Over the
Put the second one down for the other 5 walls, or 6 walls. We'll pick the big one later.
Well, I guess the question is, if we're sticking with these 4 colors, do we just make that main wall number 8 the same material? Or do we just have it match one of those colors?
Well,
That's the question.
I think once we see it up, we can gauge better what we want to do, and we can if we want. If we feel, oh, they're kind of separate, maybe we don't have to. We can make it a little different shade, something that we like, but maybe a darker brown or something. Because the building will be up, I don't know.
Well,
We have a better
if
idea.
block texture matters, then we need to, that's something that needs to be decided today.
What?
Block type, block texture
Well,
matching.
that has to be decided today.
No, or I think Ryan's saying we make this match those walls
Leave
in
the
the
same
type of
material.
block.
Oh, right.
Not.
Yeah, that we have to decide now.
Right.
Do the big wall on 7 and the second one down for the rest? Is that what we're thinking?
Up to the rate, it's going to be a big wall.
Ryan's suggesting that we make it the same as 4.
So the material looks the same.
I mean, I'd like to see either all green walls become magenta or all magenta walls on the lower part become green. And that's my personal opinion. If you guys have a different feeling, I mean, I'd like to either see block and load, I'd like the bigger blocks everywhere. But if we're gonna go with the split face, I'd like to see all the wall materials the same. So, colors, I'm gonna leave to the rest of you guys.
So why don't we, for argument's sake, leave 7 where it has to be, right? There is no choice there, right? Why don't we take the remaining number of walls and just make 8 green and textured with the stacking block? And then we can come up with a color for that.
For 7,
Yeah, 7 we can determine
and
at a
then,
later date.
but the rest of the walls are gonna be the
We
split
could,
face.
that's, I think what Ryan's trying to
Or,
say.
I said I would personally like to see the lock and
All
load.
lot, but if that's not at all possible,
But is it possible, if you did all walks in
It would be extremely costly. It's,
and this is something the town has to live with for a very, very long time.
We're talking about $1 million. It's
The land
substantial.
right, but, I mean, that's,
Kelly can't make that decision, is what she's saying. You have to run that by Ron.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. No, that's okay. Still not mine.
Well, I think the larger block on 7 and 8, choose a color later. The second one down for the rest. And I'll throw that out there, you guys.
What color is the second? Is there a name?
That's harvest. Harvest blend.
Good, no good? What do you think?
Harvest,
Yeah. Harvest blend.
yes.
Anybody else?
The other thing I can suggest is, pick some objects that are forever, you can put them in front of the door, put some idea of it. When speaking, we look at it more.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm lost for words now, but you guys can say what you want, and I don't know, decide.
What was everything? Like big blocks?
I like the ones.
That's the meter. The big blocks.
That'd be the best, that's the easiest. The board would like to see the big box on the whole thing.
There you go.
Back side.
That was,
I think that's our best consensus, I think it's unanimous as well.
Yep. Okay. Where we're at, we'll choose a color later. I don't think we need a resolution, do we? This is just a discussion on wall colors. Okay.
Just so I'm clear, the walls that are on the north east corner, the ones on, they're gonna be the big block.
Everything's a big block. That's what the board wants.
That's what we would love.
We'll have to check on these small walls as soon as possible. I mean, they're like 3 feet.
You can do the split face,
7.
pick your own color, 5 and 6, but the rest of them we want the big block. Fair enough? Okay.
5 and 6 could be any material.
Yeah.
Cast in place, it could be single blocks. And I don't think you can see it from behind.
No.
You see
No,
from
I mean, you
anywhere.
can't see most of these walls. You can only see this wall.
So, okay, where does that right? It's
Yes.
lockable.
What you want on 5 and 6, the rest of the large block.
And we'll determine the color
Yep,
when it's ready.
and it's a lock and load.
Lock.
They can do lock and load along number 7.
Yes, that's where they need it.
That's the one that has to be.
Yeah. Okay. Everything else is in lock. Okay. Okay. Next this evening, we got Chandler Heights, Chandler Lane, 9-lot residential subdivision, extension requested conditional preliminary approval. The 7-6-month extensions granted expired during COVID, so we weren't able to get together to discuss it. We have our form. Everything seems to be in order. Any discussion on Chandler Heights? No.
It would go retroactive to March 28th. Or 6 months ago to September 28th.
Okay, I have a motion to extend Chandler Heights till September 28th by Rich, seconded by John. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Doyle State, Therese, okay. Doyle Staples, 208, New York State, lot line change approval, extension request has been, 490-day extension granted. It expired, there are 90-day extensions. It expired May of 2020, and it would only be to August, so we'll give it 2 90s.
Yeah, I'd suggest that we're playing catch up here. Royal Staples can only get 90-day increments because it's a conditional final approval, unlike Chandler, which was preliminary. So I suggest 90 days retroactive to May 12th. That would take you out to August 10th. And then do a second 90 days from August 10th to September, November. I think I did the math to November 5th. Because 90 days is 90 days versus 3 months. So if you agree 2 separate votes, 90 days backwards, that would take you to August 10th, and another 90 to take them up to November 5th. Under the assumption you don't want to redo this, it should vary one in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so first motion to grant it to August 11th, 2020. Motion by Rose, seconded by Ryan, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I think it's the 10th.
Okay, and then, Sharif refused. And then another motion to grant another 90-day extension out into November, November 5th. Motion by Rose, seconded by Ryan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, approval of the June 8, 2020 planning board meeting minutes. 2 minor edits here. Yours. Okay. All right, any discussion on them?
I would send some minor edits to Sue. It was a good job. These were difficult minutes.
Yes.
It was nice having one.
Yes. Great. Okay, entertain a motion to adopt those minutes. By Rose, seconded by Ryan. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. You were probably there.
Okay.
You were probably there.
I'll probably listen, but not.
So we're all set. Listen, Tree.
Yes. Kevin.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes. Everyone, this is my friend Kevin Sumner.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for your patience.
Do something yet? You can tell me when you want to stop. I don't know how late you usually go, but, okay. Plenty of slides as long as you're.
Okay, great.
Call back to follow that.
You're safe for putting up with this.
We used to do quite a few subdivision reviews at the request of different towns. That's fallen off a great deal, but I am certified to do the construction site plans and inspections, and we do that for our own projects. And I teach the 4-hour contractors training that contractors on construction sites have to have. So
I'm still kind of engaged in it. And honestly, we've seen some improvements, but we see a lot of things that are still being done wrong. And, erosion and sediment control is not an exact science, but we could be doing a lot better than we are. So that's kind of what Jay and I talked about, is to focus tonight on some of the more common practices and procedures on construction sites with the erosion control stuff, and what we could look forward to do a little better job on that. Do you have a remote, Jay, or are you gonna? This is actually looking out the window of my office the other day. I thought I would start out with that because they were doing a little construction project at our building, and they had a bunch of soil piled up on the corner of the parking lot about 8 feet from the storm drain, and it started raining like crazy. And of course, this was a little site that didn't need a construction site permit. But it's kind of like, the death by 1,000 loads. And we get these sites and they say, they're going to be done and stabilized in a few days or